So most theater I design, one of the most common questions are what size screen do I do, and which we just touched on, what aspect ratio do I do? So what's your thought process between describing screen size and aspect ratio?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and it comes up all the time. And basically, our advice is to go as big as you can, of course, because some people say, oh, that's too big. But like anything, over time, you realize, oh, I should have gotten bigger. Like, how many people here have bought a TV and they've been like, oh, they bring it home and they're like, uh-oh, I hope I didn't get something too big. And like a week later, they're like, should have gone for the 85-inch.
That's right.
And so, our advice is always go as big as you can. You are constrained oftentimes by the room, particularly the height. So if you have like a 7-foot ceiling, you can only have the screen so high. You don't want it on the floor where you're going to be hitting it with the vacuum. You don't want it buttoned up necessarily right up against the ceiling. So when you leave, a 1.5 or 2 feet off the ground, and you leave maybe 6 inches from the ceiling, that's kind of defines your maximum height. And then the width goes, scope screens, and when I say scope screens, I mean widescreen, something beyond a regular HD TV 16:9, but something that's like a 235 or 240 aspect ratio. By far, those are the most immersive experience that you can create in home cinema.
Absolutely.
A common misconception, and I run into this with my friends as well, they say, oh, well, I'm mainly watching sports, or I'm mainly watching TV, and all that content 16:9, and so I don't want to go with a widescreen for when I'm watching movies, because then my screen is smaller when I'm watching sports. And then I say, well, but it's not. And I'm not sure what the disconnect is, but at the end of the day, go with the largest 16:9 screen that you can fit, but then go wider on each side to get to that 235 or 240 aspect ratio. And then you can really enjoy the best of both worlds. So when you're watching 16:9, yes, you have black bars, or you can fill it in with stretch, or you could use a masking screen if you want to close it in like that. But when you go to watch a movie at 235 or 240 compared to what you would watch at 16:9, it is really a mind-blowing experience, the difference. It is I believe, it is among the single most important thing when you decide what projector, what size screen, what size components, all that stuff. Probably the most important thing, because you're going to be living with that screen a long time.
Yeah.
That's why we really advise going widescreen and having that immersive experience.
Yeah.
The imaging, as you mentioned, is very important. Having the center speaker right behind the screen, so when the actors are talking, you can actually see the imaging, like it's actually right coming at you, because most actors on screen when they're talking are in the center of the image. But what also is an interesting point to tie this into what we were talking about just prior to this, with the aspect ratio control, the reason why acoustic screens are popular as they are is because when you start planning on having this ultra wide screen and you go 240, all of a sudden the challenge becomes is, wait, where am I supposed to put my left and right speaker?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so that's just an important point I wanted to tie back in, because when you do, or if you do make the decision to go with a 235 or 240 screen, all of a sudden your speakers are pretty much, unless you happen to have a giant wall, and if you've done your job of going as big as we recommend you go, you're going to realize, like, wait a minute, that only leaves maybe a half a foot. Like Michael was saying, this whole front wall is basically screen. So having the acoustic transparent screen is the key to being able to get that wide screen and immersive experience, because your speakers now have to be behind the screen. There's no room for them otherwise.
Yeah.